Welcome everyone, I'm AngloV the Polish guy, and in this video I will summarize the previous 4 T3 destroyer fit tests, and I will answer which T3 destroyer is the best for C2 wormhole PVE. My last few videos focused on in-depth tests of these ships with various fits. You can watch them using the playlist in the description. Today I will compare my experiences with all 4 of them, also focusing on stats too. Keep in mind that those aren't perfect fits and there are a lot of ways for improvements, but for the sake of not doing the whole thing again, I will use my experiences with what I had. Let's start with overall feel of flying these ships. The T3 destroyers surprised me with how well they perform in C2 wormhole PvE sites, and all of them are fun to fly. Speed tanking makes using these ships a lot more challenging, but sometimes impossible. There are a few sites that are either nut heavy or web the ship, and that reduces the ability to survive. Since most of the time getting just a few decent hits from rats applied can destroy the ship, it makes it essential to keep up speed and the whole setup running well with no cap issues or slowdowns caused by webs. Speed means everything. When it comes to dealing damage, every ship has its own weapon system for it. Their effectiveness varies and all have a distinct feeling to them. The Hackett II may be statistically the best with DPS, but its range is horrible, while for example the Jackdaw, while not a heavy hitter, can apply the DPS very well. For tanking, we also have different methods. The Sweeple is the easiest in that regard, since it uses passive shield regeneration, so for the most part it doesn't require attention. The Jackdaw is also fairly forgiving, since it's active shield tanked, but despite that there is still some passive regeneration, and it's also the top HP layer, so losing all shields isn't as serious as losing all armor. Let's have a look at the ships more closely, also with factoring in the stats. They will be based on level 5 skills to avoid my character training bias, but should reflect the actual difference as well. Remember that some of this might be affected by either modes or ammo types. We'll start with the Hackett II. The Hackett II is, in my experience, the worst ship for C2 wormhole PvE. Its damage is the best of all 4, but getting it actually applied is insanely hard. The fit itself requires some maneuvering to fit everything properly too. At optimal range, the Hackett II chews through anything thrown at it at the sides. Actually getting close enough is a nightmare though. If you start at a long range, your angular might be low, making you easier to hit. It isn't as much of an issue for other ships, but the Hackett II has the hardest time speed tanking. It has a very bad signature radius and the defense mode doesn't reduce it. At the same time, it has a fairly low speed. The amount of DPS repaired isn't also that great, so combining all of this, the Hackett II has to constantly use defense mode and can run into very bad situations, such as where the battleship rat can hit it, almost destroying it. Overall, piloting it feels very sluggish and its effectiveness is very low. After doing some tests in a C2 Wolf-Ride wormhole, which is very favorable to all the fits here, the Hackett II with the effect is on par with other fits in no-effect wormholes when it comes to time efficiency of the sites. The added damage offsets the time to get to rats by destroying them faster. If you have a Hackett II, then I would say a Wolf-Ride where the DPS goes over 1100 is a must for when it comes to PvE, because otherwise flying it will be neither fun nor effective. On top of it all, it's also hard to fit and in my case required an implant. Now let's move on to the Jackdaw. In contrast to the Hackett II, the DPS here is the lowest, but it has the highest range of all the ships here. Piloting of it is fun and not too hard. Of course, you have to manage your shield rep and pulse it at the right times to not run out of cap, since the feat is weak in that regard, but other than that, flying the Jackdaw is easier than all the other ships showed here. Thanks to using rockets, you don't have to switch ammo types or manage damage application at all. The payoff is that you spend a lot longer inside, since you have to grind down rats for a long time with the damage as low as it is. Still, it's not as long as the Hackett II. As much as this feat is fun to fly, I don't think it makes sense to use it in the first place unless you have it trained up anyway. The fun of flying it is good, but the effectiveness not so much. Moving on to this feat pool, I would say it's somehow of a middle ground of all the feats. The DPS and its application are decent and fairly effective. Where this ship excels at is the ability to move fast between targets. It never feels sluggish, and with high enough DPS it isn't slow in regard to running sights either. Since it uses passive regeneration and projectile weapons, it doesn't use much cap either, so it can face newts much easier. Since it tanks so well, it can drop one of the shield power relays in favor of more damage, making it close to the Confessor in performance. The last ship is the Confessor, in my regard the best T3 destroyer for C2 Wormhole PVE. It has the most damage that can be actually applied of all the 4 ships, while not suffering from any issues. The range is good and can be regulated well with fast switching crystals. The speed is also fairly high, and combining it with the lowest signature radius that can still be lowered by defense mode, the tanking here is really good despite the raw rep amount not being the best. Putting the Confessor in a wolf raid wormhole makes for a very effective sleeper killing machine, and I will definitely try it out long term in a Civ 13 wormhole. I'd say that objectively the Confessor is the best ship of all the presented ones. It's fun to fly, doesn't suffer from any crippling issues, and is all around very effective. The price itself isn't bad, and despite some fitting troubles, it's a solid ship. I will definitely continue using it in the future, since I got an invitation into a C13 wormhole, which should be an interesting experience. As for all the other feats, the experience may vary and is fairly subjective. If you don't want to train for something else, then any of the T3 destroyers can run C2 sleeper sites fine. Some of them will just not be that good. If you want to train up for one just for this purpose, go for the Confessor. Otherwise, stick to the usual battle cruiser ships like the Drake. Now, for a final word, I would say that the Confessor is probably my most enjoyable experience in C2 Wormhole PvE so far. Despite using various Drake feats and an Ishtar before, the playstyle of speed tanking T3 destroyers is just way more engaging and makes for a lot of fun gameplay. I would definitely recommend trying any of the feats showed here. If you want an in-depth look at them, follow the link in the description to the playlist of dedicated videos. The feats themselves will be linked in the description too, but remember that some of them can be improved, and for that you can browse comments of the dedicated videos. I won't cover those improvements since I decided on using a Confessor with maybe a slightly redone feat, but other than that I most likely won't use any of the other T3 destroyers again, at least not for PvE. I have to once again thank Ranzera for providing the initial idea of testing these feats and for coming up with feats for the Svipool, Jackdaw and Hackett II. Thanks to Artanaz for sending in the Confessor too. Also, I have to mention Wingspan Delivery Services here for helping me out with giving me a location of a C2 Wolf raid that I had trouble finding for a few days. They saved me a lot of time and I definitely recommend their location service. So, I hope you learned something over the course of this series. I definitely did myself. Let me know if you checked out any of the feats and how well did it go for you. Remember to subscribe to be notified about my future uploads. Thank you all for watching, that's it from me today, see you next time.